morning. I'm Pastor Allen. It's Wednesday, September 23rd, and I had this done for yesterday, but my Bible software that I'd been using was discontinued and sold to another company, and I tried using theirs, and it was a mess, and so it didn't work out really well, and I ran out of time. And we'll get to verse 51 in our passage, and it's one of those controversial verses, which I'll explain in a moment. But today we're looking at Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, verses 45 through 51. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, "My master is staying away a long time," and then he begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So Jesus tells this parable about his return. He tells this parable of the two servants, the good and faithful servant and the wicked, disobedient servant. The faithful servant does his master's will. The wicked servant forgets who he's serving. And so verses 45 tell of this servant who is prepared. He remains faithful, even though his master is delayed in returning. He keeps doing his job, and in the end, he is highly rewarded. Verse 47 tells us that the Lord will put him in charge of all his possessions. So not only does he do a good, faithful job, but he gets a promotion, a reward. Then Jesus gives us the opposite, the wicked or the bad servant. He takes advantage of the master or the Lord being away. He takes advantage of his master, but he also takes advantage of his fellow servants. In verse 49, the wicked servant begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. So he's no longer doing his job. He's no longer doing what the master expects him to do. He begins partying and begins getting drunk. So he's not serving his fellow servants, giving them food. He's not taking care of the master's things that he was put in charge of. Verse 50 gives us a warning. The master will come. He is going to return. It's a matter of time, but he is going to return. We just don't know when. On a day when he's not expected and at a time unknown. And see, that's what Jesus has been emphasizing in this whole chapter 24. Just like some people acted in Jesus' day, they were unconcerned about God. They were unconcerned about the things that Jesus spoke about. It's the same way today in our time. People are unconcerned about God. They're unconcerned about the things that Jesus is saying. In fact, they're ignoring the warnings that he so clearly gives us. But the return is going to happen. And then verse 51 spells out the punishment. And this is the controversial verse. There's two ways of looking at it, as a literal punishment or a metaphorical punishment, because it clearly says he will cut him into pieces. The Greek word used here literally means cut in two. This happened in some cases as a punishment during that time, more so during the Old Testament times. We know that rulers and kings used that as a form of punishment. But the alternative, metaphorically, is a severe whipping. And some say this is the right reading because it says after this, the wicked master was assigned to the place with the hypocrites. Either way, this was a punishment. And it wasn't a good punishment, and it wasn't something that people wanted. And I don't know. I can't say for certain whether it's literal or metaphorical. But either one fits. So the punishment happens. The wicked servant is assigned to the place of the hypocrites, which I believe is Hades, where the end result will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, or grinding of teeth. And this signifies great despair, great sadness of what has happened to them. And this tells us, it warns us of God's coming judgment. And it is as certain as Jesus' second coming. So beware. Jesus wants us to be prepared. And we are the ones that make the choice whether to follow, to be like the good servant, or be like the wicked servant. Faithful following gets a reward. Wicked or disobedient following gets punishment. And right now we have a choice, but one day we won't. So be alert, be aware, be faithful. Jesus is going to return. Have a great Wednesday, and we'll talk to you later.